Hey designers, did you know that no matter what industry you're in, we all share a common set of skills as a design discipline? As a design methodology, there are specific things that we can do to always master and hone and improve our craft. And in this video, I want to look at the core skills that every designer needs to have and master to be successful. Hey there, I'm John Diallo, and I'm here to help you improve your design and creative abilities. Let's jump into this one. All right, so core skills that every designer, no matter what industry you're in, needs to be mastering and getting better at every day. So it doesn't matter whether you're an engineering designer or you're an interior designer or you're a UX designer or some other flavor of design. We're all doing design methodology. We're all solving problems in similar ways. We're just applying that problem solving with different specialties and in different industries. So we're gonna look at 8 skills in 4 different categories to help us improve our design workings. All right, the 4 main categories we're gonna look at are creativity, problem clarification, synthesis, and domain knowledge. All right, so the first 2 skills fall under the category of creativity, or doing creative thinking, or what I like to think of as creative cognition. And if you're interested in learning more about creativity, you can check out my other video where I do a deep dive into what creativity is and how it works. But right now we're gonna look at 2 specific skills. The first skill that every designer needs to master is exploration, or wild exploration. And what this really involves is the ability to look far and wide, not just for inspiration, not just for collecting different ideas and different approaches, but also to be able to think outside the box. And I know that's a cliche and everyone says it all the time, but really what that means is to be aware of what the standard approach is and to come up with different ways of thinking about it. We're persevering and we're pushing and we're trying new things. And what that's going to allow you to do is to look far and wide and grab the unexpected solutions and bring them in and make them work in a way where it creates a unique approach to something that hasn't been done before, a unique solution to a problem that has been commonly addressed and in a different way. The second skill we're going to look at is ideation and iteration. And I've put these 2 together because they are closely linked. But the idea of ideation is being able to generate ideas, and it's very closely coupled with exploration. But specifically, it's not just the exploring of many different ideas, but ideation is also taking your ideas and making some form to them, bringing them into the real world, taking them out of your head and making them a reality in some form, whether that's a sketch or a really rough prototype, or even just a brief explanation of what the idea is. You're taking it from this mental cognitive world and bringing it into the physical world in some way so we can begin to interact with it more realistically. Iteration then is taking those ideas that you've brought into the real world and beginning to recombine them or build on them additively or subtractively in a way where the idea begins to grow and evolve into something it wasn't before. So ideation and iteration work closely with exploration in a powerful way to build you into a more creative designer, a designer that is going to be able to come up with novel forms and new ways of thinking and doing things that haven't been explored before. And really, without creativity, everything that you generate is expected and it's bland and it's boring. And it actually is often not even designed at all because you're not thinking about different types of solutions that can be applied to the problem space. And without doing that, you're actually just applying a linear thinking pattern that design doesn't work within. Design is a non-linear process of problem solving. So why would I start with creativity? Well, I think creativity is often lost in this world of very logical approaches to problem solving. As science and math education and STEM education has really increased, I think we've lost a little bit of that creative exploration. I've been really encouraged lately to see different educational models bringing this idea in. And so I wanted to highlight creativity because that is actually what begins to empower designers, not just to solve problems, but to solve them in unique ways that we haven't explored before, that actually leads to a better fit of the solution in the end. All right, so we're gonna move on to the second bucket, which is problem clarification. And this really has 2 main skills. The first skill in problem clarification is expression of the problem, or a problem expression. And really, that's the ability to take and wrangle all the different pieces of information that you have about what you're trying to do and bring it into a clear and concise expression of the problem, or a clear problem statement. Designers are problem solvers, and without a clear understanding of what we're solving, we're not actually doing anything. We're just being makers. We're just making things. And that may lead to a solution in the end, but it'll really be by accident rather than by intention. And what we want to do is every time we're approaching a problem, every time we're working in a solution space, we need to deeply understand what that problem is and how we're solving for it. Problem expression is a skill that we really need to hone and refine in our work as designers. All right, so the fourth skill that every designer needs to know is critical evaluation and testing. And I've lumped these together because they go along with the same theme. And the theme really is not just are we looking at a solution and wondering, does it fit? But we're actually sitting down to take time to analyze whether or not the problem statement is actually being resolved by the solution. And then going even further to understand what sub-problems are we introducing and can those be overcome? Are they overcome in the solution that we're generating? And then not only are we doing this cognitively and in our own mind, and maybe even with some inventory and paper and tools we might use, we're also testing it in the real world. We're putting it out there to understand how human beings in the real world settings are interacting with our solution to see whether or not it actually works. So this category of problem understanding really takes these critical thinking and evaluation and this analysis and this testing of ideas and couples it with a really clear explanation of what the problem is. So we know that when we're moving on into the solution space, what we're actually trying to address and what we're trying to accomplish. What's the goal? What's the end outcome that we're trying to solve for? So this brings us to the third category, synthesis. And we're going to start in this category with the fifth skill called decision reasoning. Now, design is full of decision making. And if we're unintentional and not careful about how we're making decisions and why we're making those decisions, we can actually end up with a suboptimal or a less than ideal solution. We can actually create something that works, but maybe doesn't work as good as one or two other ideas could have. Or maybe we start with a great idea, and through the decision tree that we've made, we've actually compromised so much that we actually lose the heart of the idea in the beginning. And so decision reasoning is really the ability to balance all of those forces cognitively and understand that as we are making decisions, we are choosing to leave something out. So when we are being strategic in our design, we need to understand what is the core aspects that we need to hold to make the design solution work. You know, every decision that we make is choosing to leave something out. And that strategic thinking is going to help us say, this actually is critical and this one is actually not as critical. So the decision reasoning actually helps us to look at what we're deciding on and why we're deciding on it, and making sure that those choices that we're making actually resonate with a good solution that are going to solve that problem in a way that's very, very powerful. Now, as we're making all of those decisions, we should be expressing them somehow. And sometimes we can do that in a written document, but what makes design so successful is the idea to actually begin interacting with the solution before it's fully built, fully baked, fully shipped to customers. That's actually one of the powers of design, is being able to test out an idea before it's actually in the real world. It actually helps reduce and mitigate a lot of that risk. But this brings us then to the sixth skill that every designer needs to know, which is prototyping, or creating the solution in the real world environment. And for digital spaces, there are a ton of tools that help us create digital experience prototypes, but in other industries, it's actually doing some early forms, some early prototypes. You know, in the auto industry, they used to do this clay modeling, and they actually used to carve out a giant piece of clay to actually model what the end thing would look like, so they get an idea of what is and is not working. And then they can begin to add to the model or remove from the model different pieces and components to really make it deliver on the vision that they created. So with the industry that you're in, you need to get familiar with the forms and the medium or the materials that you're going to be using to generate your solutions, and work and get comfortable with building prototypes and concepts out in the real world in those forms and mediums. And lastly, then, this brings us to our industry-specific category called domain knowledge. And domain knowledge really is just a knowledge of the space that you're working in. And this kicks off our seventh skill, which is industry-specific expertise. And this is a skill that's built up over time. It doesn't just happen overnight. Oftentimes, designers work in their industry for decades before they really have come to master the different pieces of knowledge that are at play in their industry. And for many of us, we're working in technological spaces now, and so having a deep understanding of how those tech pieces come into play. For others, it might be how the engineering tends to work out time and time again. Or for others, having a deep knowledge of theory of colors and light and shadows and how those play. So no matter what industry you're in, there's a set and a body of knowledge you need to be absorbing and memorizing and internalizing to help you better reason out in the previous stages what's possible and how you actually get to where you need to go with your solution. And this brings us then to the 8th and final skill, which is collaboration. And then the previous skill of industry-specific expertise, we looked at all that body of knowledge that you need to be internalizing. One of the best ways of doing that is working with other people. You know, designers typically aren't the ones producing the final product that people hold or the final product that people use. You know, there's always those unicorn designers who are both the producer and also the designer. But in general, a designer's core job is to solve the problem and provide the spec for that, not necessarily do the actual production work. And so it's incredibly important that we develop strong relationships and have sort of a growth mindset and a learner's mindset as we're interacting with our solutions in the real world, collaborating with other people so we can understand what is and isn't working and the limitations of what's possible in the materials that we work in. So that's it. That's the 8 skills. And really, despite the industry that you're in, you could be applying and thinking about how you can improve any one of these 8 skills and how you can really be measuring your ability in each of these 4 areas, in each of these 4 competencies. And no designer is going to be a master in all 4 of them, and that's why it's great to work in teams. And where you know you might be weak, find someone who you think is actually strong and partner with that person to help them push you and grow you and to balance out your perspective so you're actually doing full, well-rounded design work. So I hope this video has been helpful. If it has, please hit that like button. And I'd love to hear from you to know what you think is actually some of the areas you're strongest in and what aspects of design you love the most. Which one of these skills do you think you're best at, and maybe which one do you want to grow in? And let's start a discussion on that. And if you're interested in knowing more about design and creativity, be sure to subscribe to my channel because I've got a ton more videos planned. And if you want to know more about these 4 categories of design, you could check out this video here where I dive into the secret ingredients of design. And if you just want to know more about design and creativity, or you want to challenge yourself and grow, check out this video here. Thank you so much for watching. I'm so encouraged by everyone who has liked and subscribed to the channel. Stay tuned for more content and go make something awesome today. And maybe challenge yourself in one of these areas.